Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us on the second edition of Keep Up with Pryme. My name is Laura Andradas. I'm marketing lead at Pryme Global, and together with Aske Holst, product manager at Pryme Global, we walk you through a few new features of both advanced projects and the Pryme apps. And we'll also take a deep dive into a specific area. Today, it's resource planning connected to budgets. So let's see what's in the menu for today. For advanced projects, we see application enhancements in terms of costing and pricing. Now, purchase project price lists can be used with budgets, expense sheets, or expense journals. For these, the new sales pricing experience feature needs to be enabled. In terms of purchasing, if an item has a lead time calculation specified on the item card, then this will be applied against the order date. And there's also a special page to import projects. Let's move to Pryme Fund Management. Here we see application enhancements in terms of fund allocation, where there are two new fields, which are the additional amount to reserve and the additional amount to use, and also the reclassified entries that apply to each other so that the fund ledger remains always up to date. And last but not least, application enhancements for our Pryme Tax Retention app, which have to do with the integration with the HMRC online portal. Now you can verify subcontractors online, and also you can request an activity for a period of up to 6 months. So that was it from my side. Now I'll hand it over to Aske, who will do the actual demo, and we will see each other at the end of the presentation for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And so we will have a look at some of the new features. First of all, I think I would like to show a little bit about this new functionality to import projects. This is mostly interesting in cases where you're starting up a company and you're moving from an existing system where there are already projects residing, and you want to move those quickly into the system, but it could also be a case of batch creation of projects based on another external source. So within the processing menu under projects, we now have import projects, which is a list where you can create new entries. You can, of course, create these entries using a configuration package as well. That might be a use case for it. And it is a very free-form way of creating it. You decide on, say, a project number. We want to create a project that we call 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because that was the number in the old system. That was for customer 10,000. That was called old project. There's a certain project manager, etc. Basically, this is the same kind of information that you would fill in a project wizard, but here you can do it in a batch fashion. So I can also apply a template. I can set a task template. I can set an invoice template. I can even set a sales price template if I want to. And so I can create a whole list of projects to create. And when I'm ready to do so, I simply click create projects. And now we have the projects created. They are deleted from the list. And if I go to my list of projects, I can see I now have my old project 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which has the template applied for all the settings. It has a task template applied as well. So it's a very fast way to create a batch of projects. Next up, fund allocation. We have some additional fields. I will not show too much of that, but it is a really useful feature where you can go into more details about how much to reserve in compared to how much to use. But it is a kind of a special scenario use, so I'll not show that there. What I will show is for the HMRC integration. Those customers using our additional app for CIS, the construction industry scheme for withholding taxes in the UK, there is a requirement that all subcontractors are checked for or that are verified with the HMRC to see if they are exempt from withholding of tax. That can be a manual process where the HMRC is prompted manually. You send them a paper form. But what we now have here is direct connection where you can create your vendor in your system. Vendors, of course, subcontractors in this regard. And I have a vendor here called John Smith, which is a new subcontractor in my system. And I want to withhold payments due to the CIS scheme. I've said here that under verification, I'd want to do online verification. And then I simply go to my CIS actions and say verify subcontractor. I confirm that I have agreed work. We cannot just verify anybody. And then it will send a request to the HMRC online service, and there will be a response back on the tax status of this subcontractor. It can be used on a whole list of subcontractors. So if you have a long list, you can use this from the vendor list and check all of them at the same time. And of course, you can do this multiple times. We got a response back saying verification processed and passed full validation. And we can see here on our vendor, John Smith, that it was now verified by today. The tax treatment status is standard rate, and we get a verification reference number back that we can use to show that we actually did the verification with the HMRC. So this is a quite useful feature if you're doing subcontracting with subcontractors that are covered by the CIS scheme. So these would be the highlights of new features. I also wanted to take a minute or maybe even 10 to show you some features that are in the advanced project and have been there for some time, but a lot of people don't know about. And that is some of the features we have in the area of resource planning in connection with budgeting. So if we create a new project here, let's take a demo template and select a customer for this, and we create a new project. We would, of course, budget for this project, and we might want to base our resource planning on that budget. But what happens when I change my budget? So I'll go in here and I will create some budget entries on my project. Let's say I do budget entries for a resource, let's say Cassie, and she has to do some work second week of 2024. She has to do, let's say, 8 hours of specification and maybe 4 hours of client meetings. And the following week, there will be 16 hours of development and etc. So we create a budget for this. Of course, these would usually be larger figures, but this is the general idea. Now we have a budget for this, and we can use it for our resource planning. So if I open up my resource board, which is currently quite empty, we can look at the current month and see there's not much planned, and I can import my budget. So I can say all the work that has been budgeted for on my project number 1, I can then import into this. And we see here that we have these first 2 entries in 1 week, 8 hours and 4 hours, and then the following week, 24 hours, 16 hours, 7 hours. I would probably need to move these around to make this possible. And it even seems that I'm maybe overworking Cassie a little bit here. How do we make this fit? Maybe we need to reassign this to Claire. There's some changes to be made here. And this might as well we need to replan, but at least we get the overall idea of when we do what from the budget. But what happens when we realize the budget doesn't hold? We have to cut back on the budget. We have to extend the budget. So let's remember that we now have 24 hours of development work here and 16 hours here for this week. We could move this, we could change the quantities. And if I go back to my budget on my project again, of course I can make changes, but how do I propagate these changes to the work assignments? So opening up my budget matrix again, we can see now that when I look at Cassie here, I have these entries. But there's some new actions here. There's a work assignment action saying no update, which I can change to modify, meaning when I modify something, it will modify the work assignment as well. And so I select modify here and I change, let's say, specification from 8 hours to 7 hours. Then we have modified this, and this can change the work assignment. Now, this can happen either immediately or after a review. That is a global setting if you want to have the immediate change or you want to review those changes. In my case, I've said that I want the review, meaning I want to look at a work assignment budget journal. And I can open this up and see that it has found the change that the current budget of this is 7 hours. It was originally 8. It suggests to change my work assignment for this. And so I can either reject this or accept it. By default, I will accept it and set it to modify. And then I can post that change. Then that change goes through. And in my resource planning, we will see that this is now 7 hours instead of 8. So it has changed my work assignment. If I don't want the review step and just say every change we make in the budget, automatically propagate those to the work assignments, then I'll go to my project setup and in the budget section, check this post work assignment changes. This means that changes will automatically be posted through without any review. Here I can also change what the default setting is on the budget. We saw that when I opened up my budget matrix, it said no update. I could change this to modify as the default, which means that I will always make changes. Of course, I can open my budget matrix and specifically say for this session, I don't want to make changes from work assignments, but this becomes the default. This, of course, also works for the budget journal as well. So if I have a budget journal and I pull in a budget, in this case, let's take again our budget for project number 01. If I change some dates here and say this entry of 7 hours that we had, that was on the 8th, let's change that to the 11th. And we will also change it to, let's say, 7.7 hours. And this one we might change to 22. So we make multiple changes in here. As soon as I post here, the changes go through to the budget. And now because I set it to automatically make changes into my work assignments, the change I just made in the project setup, I should see these changes immediately, meaning now this is 7.7 hours and this is 22 hours as well. But notice in this case, it did not move the work assignment date-wise. So it will not try to replan too much. It changes the quantities, but it doesn't move the work assignment. It doesn't replan for you. So you might end up a scenario where you increase the work of something and it doesn't fit anymore. So that is something to be aware of. But at least the number of hours on work assignments will match the number of hours on budget entries. There are some caveats to this. In some cases, if you do changes, the system might not be able to track those as real changes because it does not see the full context of those changes. So for instance, let's go in to our budget matrix, make changes to CIS timing. And let's say this was 7.7 hours. I remove this and put those 7.7 hours here. In this case, the system does not see these two actions as a move. It sees the first action is a delete of those hours, and the second one is an addition. And it cannot connect the two and say, well, you did these two within a few seconds of each other, so probably it was a move, another delete, and an add. So, but still, it will, in this case, remove the existing one and not try to modify it. So that is a limitation if you're moving changes this way. So if we go in here, we will see in our resource planning for this month that we've now lost these 7.7 hours. But where did the new 7.7 hours go? I moved them into the following week in my budget matrix, but they don't show up here. Well, that's because the budget matrix changes does not automatically create new work assignments for you. It can delete existing, it can modify existing, but it does not allow creating new ones automatically at the moment. So in this case, I'll have to go in and press the import function again, and that will then recreate the 7.7, and now it will be in the correct week where I moved it to. So there's nothing lost, but you will need to do the import step again. Also notice when I import, I do not get duplicates. I can import as many times as I want. It does not import anything that is already imported. It does not override any changes. It only looks at those budget entries which have not previously been imported. So that was a little bit of how we can connect resource planning with budgeting, with continuous updates from the budget flowing into the resource plan. And that's all I had to say about that.
Thank you, Aske. Let's see whether someone has a question or maybe a suggestion for the next Keep Up with Pryme about an area where they would like us to deep dive into. When does this become available? It is already available, right?
Yes, this functionality has been available since the October release. So it is available today.
But I suppose
for the changes with the propagation of from budget to work assignments. The other changes that Laura mentioned is, of course, changes that are part of the December release.
And
the project batch import, yes, that came with the December release.
Okay.
I believe.
So, anyone else? More questions? Well, anyway, if you do have questions afterwards, you can always reach out to us. So we'll close it for today. Thank you.
I think Ellen is typing. Okay, that was just a
thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the first week of January. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.